Major funding for these broadcasts is made possible by grants from New York Community Bank, Capital One Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance, Chase Commercial Term Lending, M&T Bank, Genova Burns. Additional support is provided by AKA Hotels, Corman Communities, Aerial Property Advisors, AVR Realty Company, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Bank Leumi USA, Briarwood Organization, CBRE, Citizens Bank, Collins Building Services, Connect One Bank, CPEX Real Estate Services, Cushman & Wakefield, DDG, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, Fisher Brothers, First Nationwide Title Agency, Flushing Bank, Friedman, Handler Real Estate Organization, HAP Investments, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, Madison Realty Capital, Matone Group, Mercantile Commerce Bank, Meridian Capital Group, New Banks, Optimum Window Manufacturing Corp., People's United Bank, Rosewood Realty Group, SJP Properties, Sterling National Bank, Stonehenge Partners, TD Bank, Terra CRG, The Continuum Company, The Moynihan Group, and These Friends.
Google, Amazon, all these companies, technology companies, Jet, everybody is that's the new retailer. What's happening to that poor little bricks and mortar store? What's happening to the bookstore? What's happening to the appliance store? What's happening in the world? Has e-commerce had a major effect on bricks and mortar? So today I brought together a group of individuals who are the gurus who will provide their insight. Will e-commerce affect retail? My guest today is the legendary Josh Muss, who is the chairman and CEO of Muss Development. Brad Blumenfeld, who's the vice president and principal at Blumenfeld Development. The global chairman of real estate, hospitality, and whatever other category relating in real estate at Weil Gotshal and Manges, Philip Rosen. And last but not least, the broker, but not the broker to the stars, the brokers to all the retailers. The executive vice president at Newmar Grubb Knight Frank, Jeff Roseman. So part of the reason that this show was being created was really Phil Rosen saying to me, e-commerce is having an effect on bricks and mortar. So I said, we have to put people together, and Phil was supposed to help me find some of the guests. Needless to say, I found them myself. But one of the guests who became a guest is a person who literally today could talk about the bricks and mortar of retail. At one time, you were saying just now, before we started the show, that recently you were in the Short Hills Mall, and you were looking for a bookstore, and you couldn't find the bookstore. And you own a property in Austin Street in Queens, where there's one of the few last Barnes & Nobles that's no longer going to be there, and the other Barnes & Nobles in Queens is also closing. The world has changed. Amazon was created originally in the book business. That was the mantra of Amazon when they went into the business, and today they're a global monster over there. How have you seen e-commerce and having an effect? I mean,
well, our particular situation on Austin Street in Forest Hills, which is a major local shopping street, we brought Barnes & Noble in there about 20 years ago. At first it was, scorned because they thought they were going to put the small mom and pops out of business. Barnes & Noble became the darling of Austin Street. Everybody loved it. It became a community facility. Problem is when Barnes & Noble started getting affected by the internet, some years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago, they chose not to extend their option unless they got a rent break. Several years ago, the economy was not so hot. They came back to us this past year. They say we will not extend our option unless we get a rent break. We said no deal this time, and we were fortunate enough to replace them with a Target.
So here is the question. In today's market, and you have all the interesting companies who are coming here. You helped me a couple years ago when we brought the urgent care center over here. Who's coming into retail? Okay, what retailers who have a combination of e-commerce and bricks and mortar are you seeing in your market today?
Well, I think it's a combination. Besides who's coming into retail, it's retailers who are sort of repositioning themselves and sort of creating a better environment. Retailers, I think, realize that to get shoppers off the couch, they need to provide sort of an experience for them. So now there's, coffee bars and wine bars and sort of hair salons and creating an experience. Because I think at the end of the day, people, they want to shop online for certain things, but I still believe we're social animals. People want to walk in and see people and
touch it and feel.
Touch it and feel it. Exactly. There's certain things that you're not going to buy online. So there's been a whole new, retail has reinvented. You mentioned fitness. There's probably 20 different types of fitness users out there now. Besides gyms, the spinning and boot camp and all sorts of them. So, New York City, which is where we operate, which is a bubble. I mean, rents keep going up, and there's more retailers coming in, and there's more names coming in all the time. So, we're not seeing the effect.
But, Brad was talking before, and talk to me about this Google program.
There's an evolution that retailers are getting into the internet side of business, and internet providers are getting into the retail side of business, where you have Amazon and Amazon Prime doing 2-hour and next-day delivery. You now have Google entering that market with Google Express. And, for instance, Google Express now services out of our project at East River Plaza. And they're in 25, roughly, metropolitan cities.
So if I wanted to order something, in East River Plaza you have a Costco, you have
Target, Old Navy.
So
Burlington.
all Burlington. So if I wanted to order a product from one of those stores, okay?
I'm not sure that they service every store, but they
No,
service
I'm talking
all
about
of
those major stores that we just spoke about. And I wanted to order, hypothetically, an iPad because they do sell iPads or something like that, or a TV. I could order and it can be delivered, and I don't have to go and pick it up?
Correct. And that is not just in the cities. Google is now rolling it out all over the country. So they started in the central business districts, and they're now in Midwestern smaller cities, and they're going to continue to creep and crawl.
So as I said before, they're buying it in the store and they're delivering it. Their profit margin is made by the delivery charge, okay, that they're getting maybe on the Amazon Prime approach where they're paying an annual fee, but they're taking it. Why do they have to even go to the store? Can't they go directly to a warehouse, which is something that you were talking about in your article?
That could be the next part of the evolution that Brad was talking about. It's not there yet. I think what's happening now in the retail industry is you've got a dichotomy. You've got the A malls and the malls, as Jeff was describing, the malls that are redesigning themselves. Those malls and maybe some of the upper level of the strip malls are going to do fine and going to continue to do fine because the customer wants to be there. Customer wants to, particularly women, they want to look at the clothing that they're buying, as do men.
But there's been also an evolution if you follow the other approach. Let's take Warby Parker as an example. Warby Parker started as an internet company where people, then they opened up their retail component. Their retail component per square foot is probably close to Tiffany's sales per square foot. I walked into their store on 77th Street and Lexington Avenue. There were 150 people waiting over there to look at glasses. They're doing, rent the sales of $4,000 a foot is one step from, Apple.
But that is the upper tier product, Warby Parker. Even though it's not,
It's $99.
But it's
Started as
also
an internet retailer.
Started as an internet retailer.
And
they're going
that's
the other
one of those industries where it's just squishing margins because there's so much margin in the eyeglass business that for an internet provider to come in, probably one of the obstacles and one of the evolutionary things that happens is all of these companies, Google you were mentioning is opening retail presences, Warby Parker needs to have their brand where you can actually go and touch and feel. So it sort of complements their online platform. And I think they're all doing both.
We were talking before, Josh, about, an entity that really hasn't done well. The Great Atlantic and Pacific food stores, okay? And they bought Waldbaum's, they bought Pathmark, they bought a number of chains, and they've gone through, the third bankruptcy in their history. And they're tenants in one of your shopping centers or two of them over the years. Why do you see them not doing as well as opposed to like an Aldi who opened up with you on East River Plaza?
I think that if in fact you're going to have the alternative to mail order or email order, you better have a product that's scintillating. Somebody wants to go and touch and feel. They want to touch and feel good fruit or good vegetables. They're not going to just get anything. I don't think the standard supermarket has kept up with the product. I think that's why Whole Food has done well, because if you order from Whole Food, you know that they'll deliver a quality product.
And I would say it's not just the product itself, but it's the presentation, it's the experience.
Yeah.
So if you look at Dwayne Reed today versus Dwayne Reed 10 years ago, they've totally remodeled their stores, made the materials that you look and touch and walk through much more appealing, and the same with an Aldi's. It's a more modern, clean look than an old, tired Waldbaum's.
When you go to a supermarket to get a cantaloupe, you want to squeeze it, right? You can't squeeze it on the internet.
But if you go to Fresh Direct, which has done well,
That's pre-squeezed.
It's pre-squeezed, and it's also the evolution of who you're selling to.
Yeah.
Millenniums are more geared to that type of approach. They're not wanting to go into the supermarket. If you ever try to go to the Trader Joe's in Manhattan, the store on 14th Street where the Palladium used to be, you must bring someone with you, your spouse, or you hire some vagrant to go wait on line, because the line to go through, am I right, Jeff?
It's so long.
Is so long. Okay, and it's Trader Joe. Is a price orientation. It's like Aldi. I mean, Aldi, they charge you for bags.
But it's also quality of goods and service, right?
And I was going to say, Brad had a great point before when we were discussing it pre-show. I think Brad said that every one of the retailers has to upgrade themselves, upgrade their product, upgrade their presentation. And I think that that's what they're working on. The internet e-commerce sales is still only 15% of the retail industry. They're going up rapidly, but it's still only 15%.
But we were discussing before the demise. Everybody said, and it is happening. There's no question that it's happening in the book business of the Barnes & Noble. I think the people in Austin Street are upset because now they don't have a library anymore.
It's not even a library. It's a lounge.
It's a lounge where they could sit, going into this.
But books aren't a product that you need to touch and feel.
Okay, books aren't a product,
and
also
were the first to go.
Okay, there are no more Sam Goodies. There are no more music stores.
Sure.
You don't see that over there. But Best Buy, which everybody had given it its last rights, has rebuilt itself. It's now opening up in Macy's. They're opening up.
They've reinvigorated their stores.
Right.
They've created
Absolutely.
much better atmosphere,
Revival.
much more energy, and it's become a much more pleasant place to shop.
Which internet retailers have you seen go into the bricks and mortars?
Well, we mentioned Warby Parker, Bonobos. There was an interesting article in the Times this week about this retailer, Trunk Club, that opened on the Mansion on Madison Avenue, which is sort of a great, they were selling clothing on the internet, and now they've created this sort of lounge.
Right, but some of them are pop-ups,
That's
the
not
short term.
pop-up.
No,
those are real, all long-term deals. And there's a bunch of them. There's a couple of jewelry tenants, Baubles maybe, I think
Baubles,
they're
I
called.
think, right.
And they're all sort of out there kicking tires, looking for bricks.
In some respect, this might be a vanity application because what do you do? Oh, I'm on the internet. But when you have a store on Madison Avenue, I'm not sure how long these guys are going to last.
That's actually a whole different story. The Madison and Fifth Avenue stores, many of them are there as part of the advertising.
They're
for
advertising,
the company.
but
And they come from the advertising
the Madison
budget.
Avenue stores that were on from, let's say, 58th Street to 72nd Street were until recently lost leaders. They were advertising specialty stores where the name brand could be advertised, the Tiffany or the High Class or the Polo. Now they've become gentrified true retailers over there.
Nobody can afford to, create a billboard on Madison Avenue.
Although the Fifth Avenue stores, the pricing of the Fifth Avenue stores has gone through the roof, and many of those stores, including the ones from overseas, those are lost leaders because of the advertising today. I don't know what will happen 5 years from now.
A couple weeks ago, I did a show, and I asked these two bank presidents, and also I did a previous show, talking about the effect of the euro has gone down. So people who are coming here, even though we have the 55, 56 million people, they don't have as much money to spend in the retailers. That's
a bigger concern.
I think
now.
That's a bigger concern.
There used to be tour buses of the Chinese up on Madison Avenue. I mean, I'd see them. We rented a piece recently on Madison and 59th Street, and I'd stand there for 10 minutes, and 5 or 6 buses would pull up. Now from what I'm hearing, that's being curtailed, and I think that's as vital an issue to retailers as anything else, certainly in New York.
You were talking before about the Amazon Prime up in Harlem that you've seen. Why don't you tell me?
I'm amazed. I think Amazon Prime Now is a 2-hour delivery guarantee that Amazon promises to the Prime owners.
The special $90.
Whatever it is, it's a price to be an Amazon Prime customer, and so that you've got a 2-hour guarantee of whatever you order on Amazon Prime. In order to effectuate that, they have to get the cars out of the distribution center very, very early in the morning and keep them waiting. And I've seen them waiting in rows in Harlem and different parts of the city, but I've seen the Harlem
But you were saying these cars are not cars; they're basically mini warehouses.
Station wagons, and they're station wagons that are at the end of the day they are mini warehouses.
Philip, you're aging yourself. They don't call station wagons station wagons. They're called SUVs. They're mini SUVs, right?
Actually, they look like the old station wagons. I don't know what car they are, but they look like the old, that I used to take on my carpool to school. The interesting thing is they load them up with the best-selling products, and they're able to fulfill their guarantee by keeping them waiting in the streets of Manhattan so that they can deliver the product. So if you order 5 products on Amazon Prime Now, you can get delivery of all 5 by 5 different distributors, 5 different cars.
So here I have 5 people here, myself and 4 others. How many of us sitting in this room utilize the e-commerce to buy things?
I do.
Absolutely.
Are they?
I feel like a trader, by the way.
No.
I don't.
So we use e-commerce. Do we use it for what type of products? Okay, because there was a discussion with regard, you bring up Dwayne Reed, which is Walgreens. Today, people utilize the internet to order their drugs, their health and beauty aids. Okay, that's one item. Many people order, athletic wear. Certain people, Zappos, which is owned by Amazon. People, the availability of getting the shoes, whatever you want, immediately, and they have an enormous inventory.
Let me make a personal observation, and I'm not sure I should say this. Different people like to shop and different people don't like to shop. The people who like to shop, the women's wear clothing stores will always do well. I hate to shop. I would much rather order something through the internet than even step into a store. And I think that's where.
So I'll make.
You're not going to order something. You'll order.
I've ordered a suit. I found a size that fits me, and I saw it was on sale, and I ordered 2 of them. I spent more money on the tailor, but it worked.
So I'll tell you that I have 5 kids, including my son-in-law. I consider him one of mine, and my wife. And between the 6 of them and myself, we get a delivery of between 20 and 30 boxes a week delivered to my house.
How many do you send back?
So my daughters will tell you that I actually make money on the internet because they order and then return. I don't know how it works. I'm not that good at numbers, but they tell me that we're making money.
See, us brick and mortar guys, we feel like that's traitor. It's a traitor, but I do it. I hide it, but I do it.
And even as convenient as it is, there's still some inconveniences to open the box and get out the scissors that have to.
Let's take an item which a lot of us all utilize. Most of us, if I ask the question of how many of us have an Apple device, I'd say all 5 would raise our hands. How did you buy your Apple devices is the question. Did you go to a retailer, a bricks and mortar retailer, to a Best Buy or an Apple store? Or have you ordered this, or a Verizon store? Or
I'm lucky because I'm in the General Motors building, which has the largest Apple store in the world. I just go downstairs and I buy it there.
But because you're in a convenience situation. Right. How about yourself?
But Apple is a great example to me of a retailer that they sell, 8 products that they have? 8 products that everyone knows what it is.
And the same price because they've controlled the pricing.
But yet you walk into an Apple store and it's like there's a giveaway going on. I mean, every store, you walk into that store at 2 o'clock in the morning, it's busy on 5th Avenue.
2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, every single hour of the day.
They're unique, but it's an experience. You go into an Apple store and it's different. And to me, I'd much rather buy something in that store than order it online, even though I know exactly what it is and what I want.
But that's not convenience, that's experience as well.
Right.
I mean, the interesting thing is some people go shopping, and I'll say this up and down 5th Avenue, whether it's Bergdorf or Barney's on Madison Avenue, people go for the experience. Men, women, everybody. And I think that's the same category.
But I think what you bring out is it doesn't matter, even though more people are utilizing, and I recently read this article on e-commerce or e-marketing, that people are using mobile devices to do, more people are using mobile than handheld or desktop products over there. You're always going to have bricks and mortar retail. It's the question. It's the question of what. Okay.
Me too.
Okay. I think the question is what type of retailers. And as we said before, there's been an evolution. Okay. There were always optical stores, but the number of optical stores increased. And then there were the Warby Parker, and there are other people similar to Warby Parker, but they don't know about them as well today.
Just one point on the malls. The top quality malls, the top quality in terms of stores, location, etc., they're doing great. And they're going to continue to do great. Even if, there is a recession, they'll continue to do well because the people shopping there aren't abandoning the malls for e-commerce and they're not going to stay home. I think those malls will continue to do well. The question is, in the entire industry, it's whether the strip mall on a highway in Kansas, whether that mall will continue to stay in business. As what I said to you in the room is that you have a website called deadmalls.com, which measures, which malls are going out of business and notifies you every day which malls go out.
I have children who live in Denver. And I will pass malls, which are dead malls, because they had retailers who are no longer able to exist.
Right.
I think the best example is Kmart Sears. they're not existing. I mean, Kmart, Sears years ago had the best appliances. People would go for the
But they didn't have the best customer service, and that's where they fell short. I think that I don't think it's necessarily the best malls. I think it's the best retailers. So whether it's Chipotle, I don't care if they're in an A mall or a B mall, that people are going to go there because they have a great customer experience. It's the same. To me, it's every retailer in every category is upgrading their game, whether it's health clubs, movie theaters, fishing shops. Bass Pro just took over the old Grizzlies Stadium in Tennessee and built a 300,000 square foot experiential, state-of-the-art, like fishing and boat shop.
Right, and I believe I read an article about the Bass centers. The average customer who goes to a Bass shop spends 2.5 hours in this shop. Okay, Josh, I don't know what you and I would do there for 2.5 hours.
I go to the golf store.
You'd go to the golf store section.
But they come from...
They come from around the area. I mean...
They probably knocked out about 10 smaller stores in doing that when they built the 300,000.
But everyone there's room for the local fly shop or the local hunting shop to step up their game as well and compete. And if they don't...
But we've seen evolution in retail. If you just look, and Jeff has been really helpful to me over the past seasons, always bringing evolving trends, okay, in retailing. Look at healthcare today. People don't stay in hospitals. The average stay in a hospital, to get you to be in a hospital room for 2 days, you have to be inordinately sick, okay?
Or very rich.
Okay. The situation is you're in an ambulatory surgery. They get you out today they're doing hip replacement in the same day. So the healthcare is opening. You were saying before, take the dialysis center. You have a dialysis center in East River Plaza, and next to the dialysis center, you have Planet Fitness. So the relative who brought the person to the dialysis center has to go there.
But that in itself is a problem because you're ruining the mix of retailers within the center. In other words, as urgent care grows and takes over the bookstore, all of a sudden you're...
So forget the Target Plus. This could have been, you had to rent a Target Plus. You could have rented to the dialysis
Somebody
center.
filled the empty theater with an urgent care center ready, so we didn't have...
Okay, so it was too late.
The urgent care, though, they're not sort of the clinics of yesterday.
Yeah, but they're not bringing in buying customers.
It's a different type. Some degree, I agree. They'll go for coffee, Stumptown Coffee.
Maybe.
But I'd like to thank my guests who really gave a pretty good perspective on what's happening to retail and e-commerce. I'd like to thank Josh Muss, Brad Blumenfeld, Phil Rosen, and Jeff Roseman. See you next week. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Stoller Report app. See you then.